morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here today. And just as we're getting set up here, I just wanted to take a moment to, number one, thank the First event staff. This has been a first-class event. I travel around the world speaking very often, and this is one of the best events, the most professional staff that I've worked with. It's all been very seamless. Secondly, I would like to thank the country and the people of Japan. This is my first time in Japan, and the country has been everything that I dreamed it would be and even more. And the hospitality of the people, it's really overwhelming. So I've been excited about this event since I think December timeframe when we found out that I had been honored and selected to speak with you all here today. So I'm excited to speak to you about a program called Incident Command System for Industrial Control Systems, also known as ICS4ICS. How many folks in the room, just by a show of hands, have heard of the National Incident Management System and/or Incident Command System? Hey, I'm seeing some hands. That's a good sign. So, Incident Command System is the system that is used by emergency and first responders around the world. So it's a framework that was invented in the 1970s. Every firefighter, every police officer, every paramedic, many healthcare officials during the pandemic were trained in Incident Command System. And I'm really here under selfish reasons in that I need you all. I need every single responder in this audience to understand what Incident Command System is and open our minds to a way that it may be able to improve all of our day-to-day lives, the health of our organizations, and the health of security organizations to be able to work together as a whole globally in a united framework in the exact same way that local fire, police, and paramedics work together at local, state, and federal levels, and even share resources country to country when we experience horrible events and natural disasters that impact us all. So that's what I'm here to talk to you all about today. These are my motivations of why I'm here. And again, your time is very valuable to me, and I hope that I do a really good job of representing this program. And if you have any questions afterwards, please come up and talk to me, because I'd love to talk to you one-on-one about any questions that you have in terms of how this framework could apply within your organization, how it's not going to step on or compromise current response plans that you all have already invested a tremendous amount of work and effort into training and planning on and then exercising. So that's why I'm here today. And again, I'm very excited. So thank you all. Here's my clicker. Sorry, I was working off the mouse. Okay, so a little bit about myself. It's always awkward when people talk about themselves, but I suppose it's a nice backdrop to the slides that I'm about to go into why in the world would a cyber incident responder care about what local police and fire and emergency managers are doing. It actually stems from the beginning of my career. When I worked in the governor's offices of Tim Kaine and Bob McDonnell, I worked in an office working on critical infrastructure protection. And I started at the very bottom as an intern, and I was able to prove my value and work my way up through the office over a 5-year period. I actually withstood a gubernatorial transition and a transition in political parties because, from my standpoint, I wasn't there for the politics. I was there to do the job of Homeland Security. This was in the formative years following 2001. So this was roughly 2006, 2007 through like 2011 timeframe. I was initially trained in traditional Homeland Security principles, anti-terrorism. I did a lot in physical security, the traditional guns, guards, and gates, how we secure physical critical infrastructure. I was actually trained in nuclear first response because I was assigned to work for the Department of Agriculture. So I was trained in NIMS Incident Command System for a 1- and 8-year exercise that's done every year for any state in the United States that has a nuclear power plant. It's called an ingestion pathway exercise. And it basically is an exercise where states and locals work with nuclear power plants to figure out if there was a nuclear release, what would that ingestion plume look like, and how would this possibly impact agriculture and crops and cattle and things like that. So I learned incident command system inside and out from my time in the governor's office and from my time working in emergency management. The basis of this work was actually why I was recruited by General Electric to lead their product security incident response team. They tried sending me emails and recruiting me several times, and each time I told them, I'm simply not qualified because I don't know cyber. And for 6 months, I turned them down. Then they finally called me and they said, you don't know cyber, but you have a good attitude and you're really good at working with people and you understand incident command system and response, and we can train you in cyber. And so that's what they did. So for the first year, I was co-located with the GE Blue team, which was a pen testing team, and we stood up the product security incident response team. There are probably many researchers in this room that reported vulnerabilities to the GE PCERT during the 2012 to 2017 timeframe. If you did, I was on the other end of that receiving mail. I loved that work. I became addicted to that work. My professional nickname as an adult became PCERT. When I went out on maternity leave when I had my first daughter, something had happened and the SOC director called and said, where's PCERT? When's she coming back from maternity leave? And within 5 hours of having my daughter, I was on my BlackBerry at the time, trying to figure out what I had missed because I had such a fear of missing out because I was so addicted to the joy and the excitement and the rigor of the job. So that's who I am. I was initially an emergency manager. Now I became a cyber incident responder. And then lately, within the past 7 years of my career, I've geared more towards product security. So I led product security programs at Rockwell Automation to include product safety as well. And then at Schneider Electric, I was the chief product security officer for their energy management business. I've recently accepted a role as the chief security officer for our US federal business. So that's a little bit about me and kind of the backdrop of why I think this is important to share with you all, because I was in a very unique experience where I had first been trained as a traditional emergency manager, and I transitioned into cyber. Many cyber incident responders simply have not had visibility into this system, and so this is what we'll be talking about today. So I want to start off the conversation by imagining a world. Imagine a disaster occurring today where you live, where firefighters, emergency services, paramedics, and law enforcement were unable to use a common system when responding. Each organization has its own response plans, its own terminology, its own role descriptions, and its own communications frameworks. We actually don't have to imagine this world because it's cyber today. Every organization has their own way of doing things. Some are built on best practices documents provided by their country or different organizations. They're tactical, they're operational in level, but they don't describe a way for the private sector to properly engage with local, state, and federal governments around the world. This is what Incident Command System can offer us. And by the way, I meant when I said you don't have to change your own response plans. To anyone sitting in the audience thinking, I might get up and walk away if she's about to tell me that I need to change all of my plans, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you how what you have today can fit into this overarching system. So, many of you all may be surprised to know that cyber is the only designated disaster type not following Incident Command System. For most modern countries in the world, they view disasters as either natural or man-made. Under natural, you have meteorological and geophysical. Under man-made, we have the things that we would expect to see. We have terrorist attacks, aircraft crashes, industrial accidents, shipping and rail, bridges collapsing. These are things that are not hard for any of us to imagine. Now, I think all of us have to ask ourselves as cyber incident responders, do any of us in this room think that there could be a disaster where we have ongoing sustained cyber attacks during a hurricane, during a tsunami? Do we think that our enemies could try to strike us when we are already dealing with another disaster? Does anyone think this is possible? Okay, some people do. That's good. In the field that I work in, in industrial control systems, we deal with the cyber physical every day. So we deal with the likelihood of industrial accidents. We deal with the likelihood of dams failing and that having cascading impacts and causing flooding. We already deal in the reality of the convergence of cyber physical. But for regular cyber incident responders that maybe don't work with operational technology environments, this is still very applicable to you. Because if your financial systems and other systems that you all impact go down, guess what? You definitely are a potential contributor to additional cascading impact if your company goes offline. If you are a strategic provider of software or other materials that are used in response and used in our day-to-day lives, you also are a stakeholder in this value chain. As an emergency manager, I learned that there are 3 things that you have to get up and running following a disaster. If you don't get these 3 things up and running, you have supply chain collapses. Number 1 is food. Number 2 is fuel. Number 3 is pharma. Those are the 3 things that emergency managers have to get going quickly. If you don't get those 3 things going, supply chains break down. So, having realized this, having come to this epiphany as an emergency manager, then writing response plans on my own, and realizing that every company, while they had very good teams, I mean, many of these companies hire, former government specialists in these areas, former government SOC directors, you name it. These folks are trained in the best for their former military. Companies have great people doing incident response. Every person in this room is good at their job. If you weren't good at your job, you probably wouldn't be in this room. That's the truth of it. But what we currently lack as a community is a way to commonly tie together our resources, because I can tell you this, our enemies are definitely pulling together their resources. So with this, it means that we can't scale. We can respond very well within our own companies. Sophisticated companies may have multiple sites. They can respond very well within their own company, multiple sites, especially if you're a global company. You know how this game works. Where things go a bit sideways is company to company response, where you may need to share information and resources, and then company to government response. Again, imagine a scenario where a pipeline goes down. The government is certainly going to be involved in ensuring that that response runs smoothly. So how do you integrate? There's also a need for consistent typing. So within incident command system, one of the principles that we'll get into a little bit later is this sense of typing. A type 1 incident commander in the incident command system framework means the exact same thing and has the same qualifications as a type 1 incident commander in another organization. That's why a type 1 firefighter from California can go to Florida and basically be able to hit the ground running, is because the capabilities are typed. I am one of 4 incident commanders currently credentialed to the incident command system through FEMA, through the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency. What I'll describe to you in a few slides later is a partnership that we have with them. But what I would envision in the future is that every single person in this room, you can be credentialed. You could be a malware type 3 reverse engineer. You could be a planning section chief type 2. You could be a logistics section chief type 1. Even admin and finance. I know that there are admin and finance people here in the room. They play a role too. And this common typing, guess what it allows for? It allows for common sharing of resources. You get what you get, and there's not much differentiation in capabilities between people when they're typed. You can start as a type 4, which is the lowest form, and move up to a type 1 once you do the training and once you get more incidents under your belt, and once you have someone willing to vouch for that experience. This is how it works in local fire departments and paramedics and everywhere all over the world today, and it's why the system works. The last point here is a very important one. Currently, governments around the world are aware that most of their cyber capability lies within the private sector. 85% of critical infrastructure is owned by the private sector. What does that mean? It means that we are the cavalry. We are the responders. Together with government and militaries within our own respective countries, we are who is coming to defend against nation-state attacks. So whether the community necessarily has had a reckoning about it or not, you are first responders. And I believe that cybersecurity is a disaster science, just like emergency management. We just don't know it yet. So with this grand idea that I had, and me talking at conferences to other people about it, saying, hey, are you aware of this system? I was trained in it. I really think it could work for cyber. Like, it could really elevate the community. It could, as the French would say, it would put us into second gear. And they said, this is a really good idea. And most people said, I have no idea why no one has done this before. This is so obvious once you look into it. And so I was very fortunate that an organization called the International Society of Automation. How many people in here have heard of ISA before? All right, we've got some ISA love in the room. That's great. We're the home of the 62443 standard for industrial control system security. 62443 has been around, I think, 20 plus years, but ISA, I believe, is a 70-year-old organization. It was started a few years after World War II. But in any event, the ISA GCA really liked the idea, and they said all of our first responders within our OT companies, our operational technology and our industrial control systems companies, they have a need for this type of common framework. And so they agreed to sponsor the program, and that's really how this program got heart and lungs to start beating. And we've grown a lot since then. So a little bit about ISA GCA. Again, we're the home of the 62443 standard. We're a nonprofit. We're 50 plus members. You can see Schneider Electric, Honeywell, Eaton, Rockwell Automation, the traditional 7 sisters, the major industrial OEMs of the world. We're members. Other companies as well, such as Dragos and Clarity, big incident response firms. So we're very proud that ISA GCA has been gracious enough to host the program. And so I did want to throw in a shout outside for them, because I wouldn't be here today without their support. So what you should walk away with today: a basic understanding of incident command system as a framework, familiarity with the command structure and key positions, understanding of how your existing response plans can be adapted to fit incident command system without breaking them. Modularity and basic formatting are key. How you can immediately put incident command system into action, and how you too can become incident command system credentialed following the conference. And it's all free of charge. Like, seriously, no one's selling anything. You're not going to get a bill or asked to fill in a credit card or anything like that. Everything that we are doing is provided free of charge. And that was my one condition with the ISA GCA, is that I never wanted anyone to profit off of incident command system for industrial control systems, because our taxpayer money already paid for this. It paid for it in the 1970s, and it's used globally by first responders, and it saves lives every day. So that was a foundational principle that I hold true. And that is my promise, is that this is free, and we will help you in any way that we can. So what is incident command system? It stems from the California wildfires of the 1970s, where various localities, I think it was over 32 localities, were brought in to respond to wide sweeping wildfires they were having in California, burning homes, burning land, burning agriculture, anything you can think of. It was quite devastating and quite prolonged. They realized that they had problems with their local fire departments. While every local fire department may have been great, they may have been very strong in their capability, they lacked a standard terminology. So they were battling non-standard terminology. They were battling surge capacity. It was very difficult for the first responders to expand and contract the incident as it morphed and changed. If you've run a cyber incident, you know how the scaling can become a problem. You know how surge capacity is a big issue that we don't talk about enough. It leads directly to response fatigue. And lastly, it was non-standard response doctrines. Their response plans were complex and non-modular. So guess what? when a new regulation came in for fire or a new best guidance on how to wear a safety mask came through, they were having to manually go in and kind of finagle these plans, and they kept expanding and they kept growing to where you had these enormous plans with lots and lots of detailed information. The plans were not wrong. They were just not organized in a modular way so that if the things changed, you could add on to them. So what is ICS4ICS? It's a public-private partnership based on the FEMA Incident Command System that provides for standard response plan templates, standard terminology, role descriptions, that goes back to the resource typing that I mentioned, mutual aid and surge capacity, standard after action reports and improvement plans, and tabletop exercises. So we've done a lot of this. It's available on our website, ICS4ICS.org. That'll be later in the presentation. But we've developed templates for all of this that are available for use free of cost. And again, we used existing government doctrine to build it, but we adapted it to meet industrial control systems as well as cybersecurity. For all the people in the room that are thinking, hey, I'm not an OT or an industrial cybersecurity company, so I don't really care. You should care, because you can still absolutely use this. And it also ties into continuity of operations plans. So this is a concept very similar. And again, electric power companies, they all follow incident command system too. Oil refineries, Saudi Aramco, ExxonMobil, they all follow incident command system. The country of Canada is actually regulating use of incident command system for cyber for certain oil and pipeline and refineries, in a similar way that the US regulates NERC-CIP for power generation. So again, it's very similar to how power companies share common linemen for disasters, how Dominion Energy can send linemen down to Florida to support NextEra and vice versa. This is the system that they use, and this is exactly what I want us to have as well. So these are basic principles of incident command system. These would take a really long time if I went through them individually one by one, and if I expounded upon each. But essentially, you have 5 primary functions: incident command, operations section chief, logistics section chief, so on and so forth. But we'll go through that in a slide or two. You have establishing and transferring of command. So this is kind of cool. In incident command system, I use this example a lot. I'm trained in ICS, and I was an emergency manager in my past life. If I'm driving home from work and I observe a car accident on the side of the road, I decide to stop. I call it in through 911 to get additional assistance, because I realize that I am not a paramedic and I cannot give much life-saving aid other than CPR and kind of emergency treatment that I'm qualified to do. I should not go further than that, so I've called in help. If you stop and you are the only person on scene, you are the incident commander until those paramedics or fire come to relieve you, and then you transfer command to them. This is how this works. If you are an incident responder or an analyst in a SOC, and you come across something that looks like ethyl methyl death, it just looks bad, you know that this is something bad on the network. Guess what? If you think that's an incident and you're suspecting that, you've been hacked or compromised, you are the incident commander until you transfer that command to your supervisor or someone that you believe is better equipped within your organization to assume command. So incident command system's very big on that, establishing and transferring of command. Single or unified command structure. So unified command is a concept where you can have both cyber and physical command together. In a single command, it could just be a cyber incident where physical is not involved. In many cases, if you're operating in an OT environment, you may want to stand up unified command initially until you can rule out physical impact, and then it just becomes a single cyber incident. You also have management by objective. So the incident commander during an operational time period may say, within the next 12 hours, I need these 3 things accomplished. That is what management by objective is. Everyone knows what the objectives are, and everyone is executing against those objectives. That is the entire point of running the incident. Consolidated incident action plans. Planning section chiefs are responsible every 12 to 8-hour operational period for updating an IAP and sending it to everyone running the incident. The IAP will say what groups need to accomplish what within what time, and it will be clear on the reporting and tracking structure as well as expectations for tracking. Comprehensive resource management, unity and chain of command, manageable span of control. This is a good one. So a manageable span of control is the number of people any one individual should be responsible for managing. The general rule of thumb is 3 to 7 people, with 5 being optimal. But no one should be managing more than 7 people during an incident. And guess what? When an incident is declared, who your boss is on a day-to-day basis may not be who your boss is when you're reporting into an incident. You either report up in through a planning section chief, an ops section chief, so on and so forth, but it doesn't matter who your day-to-day boss is. And when an incident has been declared, everything else is taken off of the table. Otherwise, it's just not fair, because you can't serve 2 bosses and be loyal to them both when you're running an incident. It's just how it is. Modular organizations, again, they can expand and contract. Personnel accountability. In incident response, we're people that are very comfortable with accountability. In fact, we thrive with accountability. In many incidents today, we lack accountability, and this hurts the organizations. Common terminology. We're all calling things the same things. We're not making up fancy terms to confuse ourselves or, to try to sound cool or anything like that. We use basic plain language and common terminology. After the 9/11 Commission report, one of the big things the Incident Command System recommended was that police officers and paramedics move away from a 10 code system. Remember when we were growing up on the TV, they'd be like, we have a 10-6 on the side of the highway. And everybody's like, oh, what's a 10-6? We did away with the 10 code system in the United States around 18 years ago because we found that during the 9/11 attacks, every locality had slightly different 10 codes. And so one person would call a 10-6, a tree down in the highway, but a 10-6, 2 counties over could be that, someone was shot. So you want to establish common language protocol when you're working in responses. And the last is integrated communications. This means using common communications platforms. You have all of your information stored in a common tool or common system, and you don't have a lot of out-of-band conversations. So this is, if you were to look up a FEMA response plan structure for like the US federal government, this is derived from a document called CPG 101. So this is what you would expect to see in a basic plan. And when you're looking at this slide, think of it from the perspective of, okay, yes, I have my cyber incident response plan. It tells me tactically and operationally who's on deck, who has what tools, what team is going to bring what resources to bear. It gives you the lay of the land for a cyber incident. But if you're in the private sector, I would gander to say that most organizations are grappling with, I have a physical incident response plan that normally includes like continuity of operations, DCR and things like that. And they're trying to figure out now, how in the world do I blend my physical response plan for my facilities and my organization and my activation of COOP together with my cyber plan? How many people in this room have been asked to somehow combine an existing physical security incident response plan with their cyber plan in their company after both were written kind of independently? Again, a good number of people. So it is a very hard task to make these things gel together. So what this provides for is, in theory, you could have a basic plan that's written that has introductory material, record of changes, the kind of usual administrative stuff, the purpose, scope, situation overview, assumptions. I love this part of basic plans. It can say things like, We assume that we won't have all of our responders available. We assume that this site may be down. We assume that these things are probably going to be the things that will go wrong and hurt us during the response. You lay all of these out in a basic response plan in the upfront part. You include a concept of operations, how you plan on working with different teams within your company. How do we think we're going to work together? We may not know it 100%, but this is how we think we're going to do it. Organization and assignment of responsibilities. You could say that the SOC is responsible for doing this. Facilities are responsible for this. Admin and finance is responsible for procuring software, whatever that looks like. Direction, control, and coordination. Information connection, analysis, and dissemination. How are you going to share information? What are the time reporting periods? Who does the information get shared with? All of this, and last but not least, the legal authorities and references. I can't tell you how many incident response plans I've seen where there's not an authorities section. This is very important for legal liability reasons. Who gives who the authority to activate the plan, and under what financial control, and for how long? Who has the authority to do that? So the authority section is very important in response plans if you don't have it today. The next area, again, really cool. We're getting into functional annexes. This is things like communications. Raise your hand if you have a communications annex with holding statements and all of that. Who has them? All right. Quite a few people have a comms plan. You can also have resource management plans, how you're going to get additional staffing if you don't have enough people to respond. Who do you have on IR retainer, et cetera. Worker safety and health, prevention and protection. Again, all examples of functional annexes. Functional annexes are key capabilities that you need during the response. Not all of them have to be activated at the same time, but generally these are what you would expect to see. And the last, which are my favorite, and this is where things get really cool and modular, is hazard-specific annexes. So I've listed some down here in green for cyber, but you could have targeted malware, insider risk, supply chain compromise. This could be alongside a hurricane or an earthquake hazard annex. But it simply says, more specifically, this is how we plan to deal with this. And then guess what? Under each annex, you can have what are called job aids. Job aids are 2- or 3-page documents that very tactically say, this is what the malware reverse engineer should be doing. This is how they do it. This is how they access the company tools. Here are the links. It basically tells you at a very detailed level, these are the actions that would be required from a DFIR perspective. Okay, so that's where you would link this in, is under the hazard-specific annexes. And for new threats as they arise, guess what? You don't have to go back into a 400-page plan and try to weave it in or figure out where it fits. You just simply write a new annex with a common template. It's that easy. That's the beauty of the modularity. So, as I mentioned before, I said, hey, in a few slides, I'm going to show you the primary functions of incident command system. These are those functions. So at the top, you have the incident command. They run the incident. They are where the buck stops. They take the losses and they take the wins. They are the ones accountable. They define the incident goals and operational periods and objectives. Operational periods typically run for either 6, 8, or 12 hours. It includes an incident commander or unified command in the cyber physical that I mentioned earlier. And it has a safety officer, a public information officer, legal, and other senior advisors. Then you have operations section. These are hands-on keyboards folks. So these are the cyber responders that all of you all have probably played an operations role in the past. Many of you all have probably also played a planning section role. The planning section role is really my favorite because I'm kind of a document geek and I love policy, but the planning section chief basically takes the main objectives provided by the incident commander saying, within the next 12 hours, we have to get these 3 things accomplished. These are our objectives. That planning section chief is going to be aware of what the ops section chief has going on and say, the operations section chief should stand up a malware reverse engineering team. The operations section chief should complete X, Y, Z within the next 12 hours. And so planning is really air traffic control for the incident. Logistics, they're cool people too. They get you what you need. The logistics section can even get you food during an incident. This is very important because incident responders need to eat and be fed as well. If you've ever worked in a SOC or an emergency operations center, you never devalue the power of your food unit. They can also get you software or whatever tools you think you need, or if you determine that the incident has scaled outside of your ability to respond, they can probably get a company on incident response retainer to support you there too. Logistics gets you stuff. That's essentially what they are. And admin and finance, these are the unsung heroes, but I think that they're becoming more and more important in our world every day. They support everything administrative. They do all the processing of bills that need to be paid. They support logistics and procurement. They also do regulatory compliance and reporting. So that is where that is housed. And a very, very, very important aspect here as well is timekeeping. So admin and finance keeps track of what the incident cost you. Did you have 9 engineers working in operations section at $250 per hour fully loaded headcount for 9 hours? That's a cost of the incident. Was the OT factory line down for 48 hours? Did that cost $3.2 million? They keep track of all of that, and they help with the submission of insurance compliance as well as insurance claims. Okay, so this is the slide that everybody loves. You may have seen this slide available online, but this is the initial incident command system structure that myself and other more intelligent people than me in incident command system and cyber put together. And the goal was, we said, if we were doing a product response, say a wind farm was down, okay, say we got a call that a wind farm is down, we don't know what's going on, we don't know if it's a fault with the equipment, it could be cyber, we don't know. If you had to develop a flyaway team, who would be on it and who would you need? And we said, this is who we would need under operations section. We said, at a minimum, these are the roles that you would need. And so again, at the top, you have unified command with both physical and cyber. You have your PIO. You better have that PIO, I'm telling you. If you don't have those supporting your incidents day to day, they're very vital. You need your legal counsel. You need a safety officer as well, especially when you're working in operational technology. You have the ops section chief, you have malware reverse engineering, network forensic analysis, host forensic analysis for the actual devices, ICS comms analysis, cloud forensic analysis, and ICS systems analyst. And how these assets can be organized is either through a single resource, like I only need 1 malware reverse engineer. Well, they're a single resource. If I need 5 malware reverse engineers, that's a strike team. If I need a malware reverse engineer and I need someone to do ICS comms analysis, then I have a strike team. A strike team is a collection of different resources that can be brought together to complete a particular task, which could be malware investigation, DFIR, disaster recovery, you name it. You can stand up strike teams for any unique purpose that you need during the incident. Under planning section chief, you've got the resources unit, the intel and situation unit. So all the threat intel people, you're sitting up under planning section chief. Documentation unit, documentation, what to write and what not to write during incidents is very important. You want people that know what they're doing that. So again, that's under planning section chief. Demobilization unit. This is something that I really I haven't seen cyber teams do this a lot, because I think it kind of happens organically as people kind of trail and fall off of incidents and get reassigned back to their regular day-to-day work. But you can successfully plan demobilization. Like, this is how many people the incident starts out with. You could start out and say, I need these 20 people. Don't argue with me. I need them off their regular jobs. They're working the incident, no question. Then maybe, 7 days into it, you're like, oh, I maybe need 13 of these 20 people still. That's demobilization. But what I've observed is that most people that once they get involved in the incident, even if they're not actively working the incident, they tend to kind of lurk in the background and they're like, I don't really know if anything's still expected of me, but it's an incident, so I'm still going to be available. DMOB kind of more properly plans for that. Logistics section, cyber support specialist. Again, you don't have a resource, they can go get you one. They can hire through a staffing firm. They can try to get whoever they can to support you. Communications unit. You don't see this as much in cyber, but this would be like if you were at a factory floor or an OT site, if you needed like radios, if you needed any type of additional communications, they could support that. And again, that food unit, I brought it back up again. Admin and finance, again, they support procurement, insurance claims, and the cost timekeepers. And again, what kind of is the cherry on top of all of this is the other artifacts that just make your life easier on a day-to-day basis. That's having the credentialed roles, knowing, hey, I've got two type 3 incident commanders, one type 4 planning section chief, 2 ICS comms analysts at type 3, knowing what assets you have and where they're typed at is super helpful during an incident. And with people coming in and out of organizations, I think today we rely a lot on like tribal knowledge in the community. Like, yeah, you know, I know my friend Aaron, I know he knows what he's doing. He's going to be on my team. Great. Well, what if he leaves in 3 years? Then I need someone else. It's like we rely so much on our own personal credibility and people knowing our experience and our resumes rather than, no, I'm typed to do this. I have demonstrated and people have vouched for this, and this is not to be debated anymore. That is the benefit of being credentialed, is that when you leave an organization, you still carry your credential. All right. So where are we at just in terms of growing the program? We have 1,400 people in 800 companies across 90 countries and 31 languages. So if you're wondering if all of this material could be available in your language, it very well could be because of our global reach at this point. And I'm very grateful, and I'm always very humbled by people around the world that they love the idea and they fall in love with the program and they throw so much at it and they begin translating the material so that it's available in their home country. I mean, these are the people that are the heart and the lungs of the program. It's not me anymore. I'm a person that had an idea a few years ago, but it's really the community that has grown this at this point. But this is just a slide that illustrates where many of our folks are at. And in Asia and Australia, we have 275 people, 200 of them being here in Asia. So again, we're very proud of this, and we hope to continue to grow with many of you in the room. Okay, so what's our plan for 2024? For training and credentialing, we're continuing our partnership with Idaho National Labs in the United States on workforce development skills assessment to identify ICS4ICS skills and tools to assess organizational skills gaps. We're providing a 20-minute training module describing the various forms that I mentioned earlier and the separate planning P process. So if you go online to the FEMA website, which I encourage all of you to do, there are like 4 classes that are an hour long each. Some are shorter, more like 25 to 30 minutes that you can take that talks through what incident command system is, and it gives you a training certificate at the end, and it's free, okay? So you can do this, and I want you all to do it because they describe it much better than I can ever do here in this short amount of time. But it gets into what the planning P cycle is, and that's really the cycle that you run the incident within. We're offering 2- and 3-day courses to enable participants to deep dive into critical ICS4ICS roles and see how they work together. We're updating role sheets for critical roles to include liaison officers, safety roles, and others. And we're partnering with other organizations like U.S. Department of Energy SIMANI and the INL 301 course that's out in Idaho Falls. And we're continuing to expand the program to include credentialing of type 3 at this point. We started with type 4 because that was what was most accessible for most people, but we're finding that a lot of the cyber incident responders are more mature and are probably ready for type 3, type 2, or even type 1 credentialing at this point. In terms of exercises for this year, we do a ton of exercises and they're a lot of fun, and we provide the exercise templates available for free online at our website. We're working on a water sector specific exercise right now with some government partners. But we're going to include unified command with the simulation of a physical incident caused by a cyber incident. We're going to expand the exercise to include type 3 incidents where it's a single company with multiple sites impacted. Think of a global company like my company, Schneider Electric. Cyber incident response and ICS4ICS joint exercises. And of course, we're considering adding an AI ICS4ICS role because of course. Industry-specific ICS4ICS exercises. Again, we've done a lot in the electric sector, some with defense industrial base, and now we're covering water as well. But we're on the lookout for more industries if you know one that isn't listed that would like to be included. We're adding additional resources as well in the publishing of the resources, the procedures, templates, and tools, and we're continuing to get feedback on them as well. There's also a greater need to tie into the crisis management team. So think like the executive level of your company, the CMT gets activated, all of that, the tie-in with business continuity plans and disaster recovery, how ICS4ICS fits in there. Okay. So just really quickly, how can I get credentialed? ICS4ICS credentials allow an individual to demonstrate they have obtained required training. So for type 4, it's like, I think it's 4 or 5 of the FEMA online courses, so you don't have to leave your house. You can do them at home. It's self-paced. Then you basically fill out a form that says, yes, I've taken the FEMA courses. Here's my certificates. They're online. They're downloadable. It's pretty seamless and easy. And then you fill out, these are the cyber incidents that I have played a role in. I perform the following duties in support of this organization around this time period, where the following individuals observed me collecting host forensic analysis. They observed me pulling logs off of a device. Whatever your particular role was in that incident, you can write it plainly enough to where you're not violating your NDAs. We don't want you to share confidential information about any incident you've participated in. We just want you to generally state that between this time period, these people observed you doing these activities. You don't have to say what happened or anything like that. And you keep the language generic enough, again, to where you're not breaking any rules or any NDAs or anything like that. And you have someone that either you report it to or someone that would have been working the incident with you that had material knowledge that you actually did this. They sign off on your recommendation. Then an adjudication committee meets within the ISA GCA, people that are already credentialed, and they review your application and they say, yes, this individual has demonstrated these capabilities and we recommend them for type 3 incident commander. Or we say, you are eligible for type 4 at this time. We would like to see additional evidence or training for you to meet type 3. That's typically how that works. Only in a handful of cases have I seen someone, where we simply didn't have enough information and we needed to speak with them and just get more reassurance that what they were claiming was, accurate and reflective of the process. So again, the FEMA courses are available. I encourage you all to check them out. And we also have our online application on ICS4ICS.org. And if you have any problem completing it, we certainly have folks that you can reach out to. So to get you started, I did a talk at the S4 conference in Miami a few years ago. It was a longer presentation than this. You could check out that video. It goes a little bit further into incident command system. The free training link is there through FEMA. My advice is to start small. If the only thing you did, quite frankly, if you didn't want to get into the business of changing your response plans, but you just wanted a baseline understanding of what ICS is in case you need it to work with government entities, having your folks take the NIMS training is probably going to be adequate to get you started. And then if you see additional value and you do want to break out the response plans, go for it. It might be easier than you think. Again, when you do have your response plans, utilizing a basic plan with appendices and annexes so that it's modular is just going to make your life easier. And it's easier to find information too, rather than searching through like a 400-page document. If you have little annexes that are broken apart and in 5 to 10 page chunks. That's a lot easier for someone to read and understand what they're supposed to be doing quickly than trying to sort through the dynamics of a 500-page plan. And then lastly, communications plans are your friend, and holding statements. Please reach out to us if you'd love to get more information or see if this could be a good fit for you. And I super, super, super appreciate your time today. And again, it's a great honor. I have to confess that having been a cyber incident responder for the last decade, I regret that I had not connected with you all beforehand, but I'm happy to be here now and happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Kauto National Service Security Center, Finland. I have a type 42 question.
Oh, what question? I'm sorry.
I have a type 42 question for you. And that means as coming from a reasonably small country with reasonably small, I would say critical infrastructure operators, this plan looks like a model that is, you need $1 billion organization to run on that, because these plans are huge. Okay, I know, I understand when the incident is huge, then the organization is also huge. But does this really scale down?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I've used Incident Command System to plan a retirement party. I'm dead serious. You can start out running an incident with just an incident commander and an operations section chief if you need to. Sometimes you don't fully need to break out the 5 functions of having a planning section chief. So the bottom line is that if you need to start running an incident with 2 or 3 people, you could do that.
Thanks. I'll definitely have a look at it. I wasn't aware of it. But there is one thing that came to my mind when listening to your talk that feels a little bit different for me. In the physical world or ICS or natural disasters, usually what you have is like a clear situation, right? There's a fire, it's clear. There's a mudslide, it's clear. With APTs or cyber incidents, very often it takes maybe a year or 2 to even know that this happened. And if you know, everyone is running around like headless chicken, and it takes us some time to realize like the nuances of all of that in order to find a plan how to react. So, and it also feels like every time there are changes to that, because it's not a natural disaster. Natural disasters don't have intentions. The attackers have. So I was wondering how this fits into that and what your thoughts are on this.
Absolutely. And what you're describing is actually my entire experience running industrial control systems and product response. Initially, when a customer calls in to an OEM, for example, they're calling the OEM because they don't know what happened. To them, they don't necessarily think it's cyber at all. They could think that it's just a regular fault with the equipment. I use a very scientific term for this. It's called JDLR. It stands for just doesn't look right. The customer doesn't know what's going on. They call in with JDLR, and you're correct. I frequently tell the government and the US government, especially with reporting timelines, most customers, it doesn't look like a cyber attack because they may not even have event logging in the OT products to be able to tell that there was evidence of a cyber attack, but they know that they're offline. And so we may not know that this has anything to do with cyber until 5 or 7 days in to running an incident. And so incident command system, it's why you want to have that physical incident commander and that cyber commander in unified command together, because you cannot assume that cyber wasn't involved until you can rule it out, right? So you keep the dual incident command going on for the very topic that you just brought up, and what I would agree, it has been my experience as well.
Thanks.
Hey, Peter from Denmark. I was thinking I can certainly see how this could help also if you're running around the clock because you have the objectives and with the time period things. But maybe you could share some thoughts on like how would you actually do that? Would you recommend not running around the clock? Because I mean, if natural disaster, you probably would. But yeah, but can you share some thoughts about like handover 24/7 stuff?
Sure, no, and that's a great question. And hopefully you're not involved in a cyber response where you're running 24 hours a day. I have seen it. It's not good. It's not good for people's mental health because you get response fatigue very quickly. In cases where you're running a 9 to 5 response, that's still an 8-hour response period that would be defined by the incident commander. You could say that the response period will run from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. during, the following time zones. And the incident commander will inform the planning section chief of when they want the next incident action plan released. And the IAP will define if there's a change in the incident commander, if like someone's going off of work or if someone's going off shift or if they just need a break or whatever. The IAP will define for this operational period, this is the IC, this is the planning section chief, so on and so forth, and the duration of that operation period and the objectives to be accomplished within that period of time. Thank you.
Aisha from Qatar. So we were trying to put our incident response plan on a national level, but we didn't know how to really differentiate between the OT incident response plan and the cyber incident plan. At the end, we comes up with a cyber incident response plan that will cover also the OT because, as you said, that it is a problem happens on the OT and we do not know that it is the cause of that is a cyber until it after some time. So after that, after it's defined as a cyber incident, we saw that it will be the same process of any other incident in cyber. So the question is it really should be different two plans for a cyber incident and an OT incident?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. I think it probably depends. I agree foundationally with you that both could be annexes within the same plan. Okay, there may not be a need for a company to break the two things apart as if they are separate to be planned and exercised separately. I agree that that could create some confusion. I think it really depends on how the organization is set up. So in some companies, it's the OT engineers on the plant floor that run OT. In other companies, it could be IT or it could be the CPSO that runs OT. So I think it really depends on how your organization is structured with resources to respond. But a key aspect of incident command system I did not mention is that the incident commander, the person that ends up being in charge and having authority and direction over the incident, is typically the leader that is having to bring the most resources to bear. Okay? So if this thing looks OT and you don't have evidence that this has gone into the IT side of the house, then maybe it's that plant floor cyber person that is the incident commander. If your company has an integrated cyber team where IT and OT are together, it's typically going to be your CPSO that's over IT and OT at the same time. And where you can break that out in the command structure is you would have the CPSO sitting as incident commander. And then under operations section chief, you would have IT operations section chief. And then you would have OT operations section chief, both reporting into the incident commander. Thank you for the question. Okay, well, I really appreciate your time today and hope that many of you all will see me in the hallway and want to talk some more about ICS4ICS because I'm a total geek about it. And again, I appreciate the honor of being invited here to speak with you all today, and keep doing what you're doing because we need all of you all. Thank you.